Great.
There you go.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today to talk about organizing your job search and talking about tools for staying on top of your job search. My name is Jody Hammer, and I am the Career Services Specialist in the Global Reentry Division of the National Peace Corps Association. And I'm joined here today by my colleague, Dan, who's behind the scenes, who will be helping out with this one as well. So we're very happy to have you here. We are recording this. We always want to make sure you know that up front. And what we will do is we'll be posting it to the playlist, the Global Reentry playlist of the NPCA's YouTube channel. So Dan, if you can maybe drop that into, if you haven't already, that would be great, and we'll go from there. All right, so I am an RPCV also, having served in Ecuador from 1994 through 97. And I've been in this role since April of this year. And before that, some of you may remember me, if you are folks who maybe are not evacuees who might be participating, from my almost 12 years working with Peace Corps headquarters, running the Career Center there. So this is really my passion, working with you and just kind of sharing some tips and getting tips from you, because you all have great advice and insight as well. So we're going to make this as interactive as we can. So looking forward to that as well. So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started? The Global Reentry Program, many of you have heard this already, so I'll make it really brief. We have 4 different pillars, if you will, of the Global Reentry Program, which is the new program that is designed to assist evacuees and RPCVs with their career and other transition, including education, the second pillar, well-being, and the continued service, staying involved and giving back and all of that. So that's how we're designed. I work mostly in the career area, and so today I'm excited to be joining you to talk a little bit more about organizing your job search. And before I even start, I want to say, I want to ask, how many of you are just feeling overwhelmed by the job search process, or just like how much it takes, or any aspect? Is there anything you're feeling especially overwhelmed with? If you could just drop that in the chat box, that'll be great for Dan and I to see, just because it will help me to maybe focus more on certain things and maybe less on others. So great. So let's see. Looking for a job is a full-time job. You've got that right, Hillary. It is a full-time job, and it's hard. And so if you think you're going to just do an hour a week and find something, that's not the way it works, right? And while you may not be putting job applications in 40 hours a week. In fact, I would encourage you not to be submitting job applications 40 hours a week, because if you're doing that, you're not doing the other parts that are equally important, and really, and tailoring your resumes and making sure that, you're connecting and networking and all of those other aspects that are equally important to help you connect with those jobs that are going to have the best case scenario for highest probability of maybe getting seriously considered and or hired. So thank you, Hillary. Let's see, Rachel says, searching through the many giant places to search and balancing all the tasks with family life and, and the part job. Oh my goodness, I cannot say enough about how much I sympathize with you right now, Rachel. I think especially in this COVID-19 era that we're in, it's hard for anyone, and those who have families, like it sounds like you do, and I do. I completely understand. I have a 7-year-old, and it seems like a full-time job trying to keep her on task for distance learning, and so you end up doing, work in the night and, what have you. So it's crazy. But with the job search itself, yeah, there's so much out there. Almost in some ways, you hate to say it, but there's almost too much, right? Where you feel overwhelmed. It's like, well, what one should I be focusing on? Like, this one has 10,000 jobs and this one has, it's hard to know. And so part of it too comes down to more tailoring and more focusing and refining your focus, right, on the kind of job that you want, and certainly, looking at maybe opening your circle or your bubble, if you will, right? To consider some jobs that may not be exactly your like ideal job that you're wanting to get to. Sometimes it takes some other steps, and you'll learn more about that as you talk to people, doing informational interviews, career chats, things like that. But also because of the pandemic and some of the jobs that are not so common right now, and changes, you might realistically be looking at some jobs to get your foot in the door and or to get some income and such now, and then be looking for that more refined search later. So absolutely. And we'll be talking about the keeping track of, of what you've applied for. Kristen, you just shared that. Thank you. That's a lot of what we're really going to be talking today about, the whole staying organized and keeping track, because it is really hard, isn't it, to keep track of, what you've applied for, who you should be reaching out to, networking, all of that. It's a struggle. And I think this graphic, that whole like organized chaos, and in this case there's a lot of the papers and such, but even when you're doing digital, which is what we more generally recommend, doing the digital organizational systems now, it still is really, really hard. It's to keep organized. So great. Does anyone else have another idea they'd like to share of what their particular challenge is? And I also encourage you, if you would like, at this point, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you certainly could just share it instead of type it. So feel free to do that. I'll give you a few seconds. I'm not as good with the awkward silences as my as my colleague Dan, in terms of waiting a specific time. But if somebody does have something else, please feel free to, you could drop it in the chat box. I'm going to go ahead and start with our next slide, and certainly throw it in the chat, or even in the chat. Happy to to talk about it. You can then, I know that you're going to we can unmute you or have you unmute yourself. Great. So in this organized chaos, like what your whole goal needs to be, right, is to organize your job search, right? Organize your, your work, your, and where that fits into your job search. So first, talking a little bit about the like clean and open space, that really helps contribute to more of a calm and focused energy. Right. So if it's possible, and I realize that many of you, are perhaps in an environment where you don't have that extra space, you may be doing a lot of your job search in a bedroom, and not even, have a desk per se, but, when possible, to get some sort of type of, desk set up, or where you're not going to be uncomfortable, or if you're on the bed, a lot of times you get what? You get tired, and it's like, oh, I'm just going to rest for 10 minutes. And then, 2 hours later, you're still asleep. So, trying to have that dedicated space, but then also trying to keep it, as open and clean as possible. And again, there are certain conditions right now that are, not the normal. I know in my case, I have my spouse and my daughter, and we're in a very small house, and we're all here for, we're both working at home, and then our daughter's doing her distance learning. There's not a lot of open, nice, clean space to be, that space to begin with, right? So I am in my basement and have kind of this, with the boxes and such all around, that I've crafted into my little pseudo office that I'm oftentimes at when I need to have peace and quiet and be separated. So that's not ideal, certainly, but it is what it is. And so I guess my point with that is we make it work, right? So as much as you can, having that kind of clean desk, not the big piles of paper and stuff that takes your energy, even just looking at it, right? When you're thinking about trying to, make sense of things. And we do recommend, as I said, digital versus hard copies of your application materials. Just much easier to keep track of it than find that file that maybe doesn't have your resume. I mean, that's more of the old school way before, before digital era took over. It was definitely more of, you'd make a file and you'd put your cover letter and your, resume, and you'd write there what the, who you sent it to, and, all of that. So, yeah, so just a couple of those things. Let's see, we have another comment here from Meg. Struggling to stay motivated when I haven't heard back from anything I've applied for. Oh, Meg, I'm sorry to hear that. And you are not alone. It is very challenging. when you don't hear back. And a lot of times, let's face it, you don't. And it's not necessarily because they just want to slight you. It's more if they have so many people that are applying, and in, current stressful, whatever situations anyway, they're not as good at necessarily getting back. Now, do I think they should be able to send you a simple thanks but no thanks? Absolutely. I think that would be really nice. It would, just complete the process for you instead of keeping you hanging. Like, okay, it's been 2 months. Highly doubtful there's going to be anything that comes out of this, but you haven't gotten that hard no yet, right? Exactly. Great. And then, Rachel, a good comment from you: tailoring your resume and cover letter for each and every opportunity. That's overwhelming, right? Talk about that. That seems very chaotic. I mean, you've got to have a system in place, right? And we'll talk a little more about this one on one of the future slides when we talk about just organizing your content. So I think I'll maybe come back and hit that a little bit more. But it is very important to tailor your resume and cover letter for each of the opportunities. Does it mean you're starting at ground zero? Absolutely not. You can take the most similar position you applied for, use that cover letter and resume, and then make those smaller tweaks to make it really tailored to this current job, and it saves you a lot of time. Okay, so great. So let's move on here. First of all, a lot of the folks that will talk about organization and the importance of that, we'll talk about cleaning out your inbox. And I don't know about you, I'm guilty of this. So I am giving this advice from, research and from, largely in part my own experience. But some of these things, like, I am not the best at organizing my inbox. I'm jealous of those folks who, like, at the end of each day, their goal is to get their inbox to zero, which is a whole system. It's really good if you can do that. I cannot, and probably never will, because my inbox ends up being, and partly in terms of what I do, I think it ends up being my search engine for when I'm reaching out in the future to maybe, or in the past, to people, and I can just do my quick, search, and there it is, they're there. But I should be much better at using, the folders and all of that, setting those all up. But that can be really helpful though for your job search, right? Doing, cleaning out your inbox and getting it, because when you have that huge amount of things that shows up, that's stressful. But the other thing, what happens when you are glancing and you have so much like junk mail and other things that are surrounding it? What can happen on inadvertently? Anyone want to unmute and say it, or drop it in the chat box? You're doing a job search. You've applied for this great job that you're really excited about, and you have an inbox that's totally full of all kinds of things. What can sometimes happen, and does happen? Yes, thank you, Rachel. You might miss that opportunity. You might miss that great email that says, "Hey, you're really talented. We'd love to bring you in for an interview." That would stink to have that happen, right? So you really want to somehow get in control of, your inbox. There's a lot of there's ways to do it online that are listed. I'm going to be sending in the follow-up to this a couple of the sources that I used for this, and some additional resources on everything from, cleaning your inbox out to some of the detailed project management software tools I'm going to be talking about. So you'll get that in follow-up as well. Okay. So you can do some of the really, easier things, right? You can do the automate, with your filters and your folders and things like that, where, that if it's from this sender, it goes into this folder, and that can really help, right? To kind of clean your self-clean, if you will, right? Like those automated vacuum cleaners, right? Whatever they're called, that go on the floor and they, they clean up everything. Wonderful. But some of the things you can also do are unsubscribe, right? How many of you, like me, are on, whatever mailing list that you've gotten on in the past that, might be, things like personal, whatever, it could be shopping types of things. Well, it could be, things, groups that just are no longer active, you're no longer really, interested in. Whatever, clean those, just unsubscribe. It's the law that any of like marketing material kinds of things, they always have to have that unsubscribe button. So it's actually made it really quite easy to do, yet many of us, you still don't get it done, right? But the next time, I challenge you, the next time you get something in your email and you're like, I don't want this, I never read it or whatever, just go in, open one of them, go down to the bottom and unsubscribe, and you are going to save yourself compound, over time, a lot of time in having to just look over those and manually delete them or whatever. But likewise, you might want to ask, if you have, friends or family that maybe do a lot of, joke emails or chain mails, and you're just not into that, ask them very politely, hey, you know what, I'm really having a hard time keeping control of my, inbox right now. And so I'm wondering if I might be able to just get off of that. You can do it, professionally. Um, and then don't post your email on websites like when they're open where others would see it, because you're really setting yourself up for phishing, as well as people just adding you to mailing, like whatever, adding you and selling your email address, and that's where you get into a lot of the problems too. So and then one of the other things that experts talk a lot about is your email, blocking time for email checks, right? So what I mean by that is, instead of every 5 minutes checking your email in case something came in, right? Yes, we're eager to get that job lead, but doing that, checking that means we're stopping whatever we were doing and we're changing focus back to email. And the studies show, with your brain and such and how it works, right? Every time you stop a task and you start something else, you get interrupted and then you go back to that task. It says, the research says it really takes you a full 20 minutes generally to get back to where you were. So that's really intrusive if you're going to be, checking your emails all the time. And, for some people, it might be turning off your email alerts, so that you don't have that ping on your cell phone or whatever it is. I know you want to be responsive to employers, and that's great, but you waiting for an hour is not going to, make or break the deal, right? To not have to really interrupt. So those are the ones that I have. Any other thoughts any of you might have, either in the chat box, or certainly feel free to unmute yourself. Oh, my camera actually came on. Wow, this is the first time in a long time. We'll see if it works. My camera, I apologize, I generally say as well in the beginning, my camera has not been working well or at all regularly. So just so you know, it may go out at any moment. So, but it's nice to actually see you instead of just the blank screen. Let's see. And let's see here. You could set up an email just for job search to help manage. Susan, that's definitely an idea that is something to consider, right? I actually had done that at one point, and it seemed to it was great in most ways, right? You started fresh. There was nobody who knew that email address, so it was only going to go, as long as you're really diligent about it, only goes to your your job related things, right? Your networking people, your whatever. But here's the one potential problem, and I had this a little bit, so it's hard. I liked the aspect of it all being job related, but what about in your bigger social network and such? People have your other email, so they might more be responding to that, so you're still going to get some things coming in to your other email, so you kind of have to bounce back and forth or maybe forward things to it. But that definitely is something that you can consider doing. So great. All right, let's see here. Oh, and Aaron, good. Let's see. I'm wondering if anyone wants to be a study buddy to block time and enter into a video, but without talking, music, just to have the presence of the person as accountability to stay on task. Now, that's a really interesting idea. I had never thought of that one, but that's a great possibility. And if there's anyone here that would be interested in doing that, just shoot share your info with, with the person who shared that, and it just disappeared. I'm sorry. With Aaron. That sounds like a great thing. Wonderful. All right. So anything else? If you do have other ones, we look like we're getting a few more. The struggle of manage, yes. Oh goodness, Meg, thank you for reminding me of that one that had come in. Aaron had sent another message about the struggle of managing a lot of open tabs. Yes, and you know what? I want to open this one up to you all. Anyone out there feel like you're good at, or Dan, weigh in if you know, if you have something to say, certainly on this one, because I tend to have a lot of a lot of open tabs, and part of it is I'm working on, you know, just so many different things, and have resources and emails and all of that, and so I end up, you know, it gets really it can get really difficult, and it's probably not great for your system either to have that much open, especially if you leave it on and don't do that hard restart you know, each day. That's supposed to keep your computer in much better health. So I'm trying to do that more myself, and maybe that's why my camera came on unexpectedly. Wonderful. Does anyone else have thoughts on that? How do you, the struggle of managing lots of open tabs, what do you do to deal with that? Good, Rachel. Bookmark folders. Yep, exactly. No, that's great. And Dan, excellent. To make yourself restart your computer at the end of every day. Great tip. Hard to do, but do it. Exactly. And the reason that we don't end up doing it is like, oh, I still need to send this email with these resources, and I'll do that later on. And it just, you know, your computer doesn't get turned off, and it really does help to restart it. Wonderful. Hillary says, sometimes when I have a lot of tabs open, I just take some time to copy paste all those links into a note or a Word document. Okay. And close all the tabs. Then I can come back later and focus better. Great. That's a really good, I think that sounds like a very doable solution, especially if they're all, you know, if they're on, you know, various, you know, themes. You could even organize it in your notes or your Word document by theme. You know, is it, you know, is it how to write a resume? Is it, you know, whatever. Great to help yourself get organized. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and move forward, and we'll keep the dialogue coming. The chat box is great, and again, I encourage folks to unmute themselves if you're comfortable with doing so for this conversation as well. So choosing your organization system, right? There's a lot of organizational systems that are out there. Okay. And you know, your most traditional, right? You know, the old school, as I said, was more of, you know, your folders and your files, and you would, you know, the printed out version. But most are beyond that, are beyond that in terms of it's easier to do it. It's definitely more, you know, earth friendly with, you know, paper and all that kind of thing. And easier to access it from different places, right? Without having to be home, for example. If you get a call from that employer and they want to interview you or they want to talk to you, you'd like to be able to access what was the job description. And if you have it in a hard copy in your home and you're, you know, an hour away, that's not gonna work right then. So we talk a lot about, you know, Google Drive, of course, right? Google Drive, and that's accessible. The great thing about that is that's accessible, you know, across any of your devices, right? So you have your laptop, you have your, you know, your phone that you can access it from. It's super easy. You know, we use a Gmail we use Gmail and Google Drive for our organizational structure at NPCA, and I must say I love it in so many ways because it's accessible wherever. I can get my emails very easily on my phone, on wherever, just by going to that Google account and signing in. So it's that can be super easy. Now on your, you know, Google Drive, of course, you know, you're going to want to use your folders, right, to organize your different jobs that you've applied for, right? And then, you know, within it, putting your application materials, right? So your resume, your cover letter, that was specific to that job, right? Does anyone feel comfortable sharing? You're welcome to, as I said, unmute yourself and share or type into the chat box. would anyone be comfortable sharing what is your organizational system in terms of like, how do you title your folders for your different jobs? How do you title your resumes that you're using? Because you end up having a gazillion different versions, right? How do you do that to stay on top of which job you applied for with what resume and all of that? Let's see if we have, okay, the chat box is lighting up here. Actually, and Dan, if you would, I was going to say, Dan, would you mind just unmuting and let's just have you share yours? We'll get the conversation going.
Yeah, that was kind of a long one. Sorry. Going back to the having multiple tabs open, that was it's a challenge I constantly face with my
Yep.
ADD work style of opening windows constantly. And one way to do it, I use reminders on my Mac a lot. If you just go to File and Share on your browser, you can save a website as a reminder and set up an alert to come back to it. Alternatively, for me, I was saying that for bigger items on my to-do list, if I don't set time on my calendar to do them, they often don't get done. I just
Yep.
I can take care of little tasks and emails throughout the day, but if I need to work on something or really review a document, then I mark it off on my calendar to get it done.
That's a really good point. I think that's true for most because it ends up being that out of sight, out of mind, right? Or not even so much that, but rather the things that are right in your face, right? Those issues of, I've got to let this person know about that. I've got to reach out and contact, and I've got this webinar at 12, whatever it is, you have those things that are the quote unquote, I guess I want to say, not emergencies, but they're the ones that are like, that have to be done, So it's very easy to have that task list or to-do list. And I'm actually looking for ideas on this. So I'm really anxious and eager to hear from others who might have tips, in addition to the things like, using your Google and writing it on the task or to do, using that tool itself. It sits there, it's in there. I need something more to maybe move that to some kind of action step, or, that I can take to make sure that each day there are items that come into my, my day. Anyone have thoughts on that you would care to share by taking yourself off mute or sharing in the chat box? All right, let's see. Oh, you've got some good stuff here. Yeah, people are definitely, you have, oh my goodness, sorry. There we go. So you add the dates. So Hillary, great. I add dates to the title of different versions of my resume, okay. I try to update the comprehensive version each month, so then I can make tailored resumes more quickly, okay. So you have probably you're probably talking about like does anyone have a master resume? Is that what you mean by the comprehensive, where you have kind of all your experiences? And then, yes, right. And that's really a good point. And that will save you a lot of time by having, that master resume that has all those dates and all that experience when you need it, right? And then from there, you take and you tailor for this new job that, is maybe not as like any other job that you've, applied for. You might start back with your master and you tailor that. But then in the future, you can, as I said earlier, you can go back to that job you applied that was somewhat similar or most similar, and you can tailor from there, so you don't have to start at ground zero and work up. Great. So yeah, Kristen agrees, like having a master resume. Absolutely. Yeah. If it doesn't have a great purpose at the top but has everything on it. Okay, that was, I think, from another comment maybe here. Yeah, that's great. I have a folder titled, Beth shares, thank you, Beth. I have a folder titled jobs, and every time I submit an application, I make a new folder in the main one with the org, title, position, and save all those materials I submitted into the folder so that they're all together. That's awesome. That's awesome. Have any of you ever had the experience of, you apply for this job, you're really excited for it, it takes a while for them to get back to you, and by the time they get back to you, you go back and you click on that link to the job description, it's no longer active. Has anyone had that? I think that's one of the most common issues that I see and hear people talking about. And the way you can get around that, of course, is to, in the moment you're applying, copy that job description and just label it job description, whatever the title is, and put it in that folder with all of the other materials, so that if and when you do get called for an interview, you will have that right there on top of your, you'll have all of that information, and you won't have to look unprepared, like, oh, sure, what job was that again? I don't have the right, can you send me the job description? Like, that just doesn't leave a very polished impression. So you want to try to avoid that as much as you can. Okay, great. All right, few resume templates for position types. Yep. Yes, Rachel's agreeing. That has happened. Yeah, and it's kind of embarrassing when it does happen. So you want to try to not, obviously, have it happen. Now, a lot of people talk to me about doing, I mean, your most basic would be either doing an Excel spreadsheet or a Google spreadsheet, right? In addition to your folders that have all of your application material. This is more putting everything into a spreadsheet so that you can keep track of what's very hard to keep track of, right? It's hard to remember when you're applying for job after job, how many jobs you've applied with the same person, the same organization, and just, keeping all of that squared away. And what's nice is, you can have your, obviously you would want to have at least, the organization's name, right? The job title, a link to the job description, but again, have that, you could have the one, but also have one that links to the actual, your hard copy file, that's digital file, that's in yours, in case it disappears. And then, who you sent your information to, right? The follow-up, like, what other information do you all put in your spreadsheet, and kind of your big spreadsheet? What else do you include to help keep yourself organized? What's worked for you? So just drop it in the chat box, or, as I said, unmute, and I'm happy to have you all talk as well. So it's up to you. We got a shy group here in terms of just talking, but you all have really good feedback and insight in regard to the actual, like, in the chat box. So that's fine. No pressure. Let's see. Someone says the date of follow-up. Good. That's great. Having that follow-up, and putting the date you might have followed up on it. A interview, what did you get an interview? What date was the interview, right? The contact person's name, maybe. Anyone else have anything they're adding here to the chat box of things you include? You could link to maybe research that you did. Sometimes that's helpful, but also if you have in an interview, there's different kinds of interviews, right? There might be, you might link to some task they had you do, or a test, or some kind of, performance thing, where you could have your materials linked there as well, right? That's super helpful. And Dan, let's see, you have some, yes. Take advantage. That is really good, Dan, to promote My Career Design Studio. This is the tool by, it's free for 4 months for RPCVs, and you can connect with it. You can get details on how to connect with it through the link that Dan just shared. But it's My Career Design Studio, and it helps you move forward and organize your job search and keep really on top of things. And it does it in such a great way, where there's even like email reminders that are really fun. They're not just like, remember, you need to do this. It's more, tips and such, but, done in a really great way. If any of you have heard Rhonda, speak or co-facilitate anything with me or do anything on her own, she's great and is really helpful. And I think that's, she has a lot of tips on organizing your job search. In fact, she's done an entire workshop on organizing, and she refers to some of the Career Design Studio ones that resources that she uses. So definitely check those out. That's great. And then there are other things like, and I have a whole slide on Trello, so we're going to talk about that. Some people I've talked to, they've used, Slack in terms of they can get their projects organized. Now, I don't think Slack has the full functionality of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, I like Slack now. I'm a new believer for, you know, getting things done and collaborating with coworkers and such on projects. But I'm new to it, so I don't hear as much about it being you know, a more in-depth one for the organizational systems, right? You hear a lot about Trello, which I'm going to talk about in another slide here, just, you know, after this. But I would like to ask you, do any of you use any online platforms, any of the many ones that are out there, to help organize your own job search? Because a lot of them really do allow you to put kind of everything in one place. So feel free to weigh in the chat box or unmute yourself. There's a lot of them that are out there. What we'll do while you all are thinking, I'll just go on to the next slide and we'll start talking about Trello, and then put your other ones, please, in the chat box, and I'd love to hear a little more about them, okay? First, this is just a sample, and this one is from the Muse, and I'm going to link this for you when I send you your follow-up materials, but it's a sample customizable job search tracker, right? It's just a simple Google form that you can really adapt it as you wish, right? So clearly in this example, they have like general information, you know, the company, the job posting, and then they go, I don't really like the title pre-interview, because it's, well, it's pre-interview to me. I think of, okay, pre-interview, I'm doing my preparation for my interview, right? Whereas, and that would really fall more in that next one. But this is more, you know, the date the job was found, right? So what date did you find it? I would definitely put the source. It says just here the date, but I would make a column saying source. So that you know, because you really want to, when you apply for jobs, if possible, let them know where you learned about the job. And this is especially important when it's something with a networking type of contact, right? Where you say, you know, thank you so much for your, or, you know, you know, I'm thrilled to apply for the whatever position, as referred by Dan Baker in, it right there. It's that name drop. If that's someone they know or whatever, that's going to instantly be like, okay, maybe give that more attention, right? So I like or even the source, you know, a lot of, you know, I do recommend as well, putting, even if it was a digital source that you found out about it, maybe it was RPCD career link, put that there, because that to them lets them know, oh, where are we getting our great responses from? So that can help them. So help them, and then, yeah, that can work well. So the date you applied, obviously, you know, doing your research, you know, sending your follow-up, you know, all of this, all of that kind of thing. You know, your interview, there's just but as I said, you can really personalize it to your own. So I'll send that out and you can take a look at it, okay? And let's see here. Trello, let's talk about Trello, which is one of the big ones for organizing your job search. And yes, I agree, Dan. I think it's a lot better. Slack, the other one that was on the list, I think that's a lot better on project management, collaborating with a big team, but using it as the organizational tool for your job search, I don't see how it would work quite as well, but it definitely is. Some folks have made it work. So yeah, and then Google Sheets, you know, seems to be the easiest way to manage this. Yeah, the Google Sheets an example is a great template, exactly, and you can really make it your own. So that's the great thing. With Trello, it's basically I mean, it's a powerhouse, right, for organizing your job search, because it helps to put everything like in one place, right? And how it works, the basics of it, you know, you can see first here in the example, you have like these different columns, right? And they're cards, I think that's what the language they use, right? So you have these cards. So the card for the applied, those you've applied for, those you've responded to, the recruiter screen, those you've had a take-home assignment or first round interview. And then you drop your notes, if you will, or your updates on that, right? The ones that, like the applied, oh, I applied at Footbook, I applied at Payfriend, I applied at Circle. So you know where you've applied, right? And you click on those and you'll have information. But you just drop those things under the appropriate column or card, right? And it helps you to automate everything from from a, kind of all under one roof, right? And then there's, yeah, I'm just going to show you here. You slide the tasks right into the cards, and then it can automate some of those actions for you to help you from having to actually, it can do some of those things for you automatically so that it, again, can keep you organized. There is something called, does anyone have any experience with, is it Zapier, I think is how you, it's an automated, I'm going to go back to this one here. On the top right, you'll see where it says Automate by Zapier. That's another, it's like this auto tool that can, I don't want to say it puts Trello on steroids, but it takes it to that next level and really allows you to do even more within this one umbrella and linking with your email and all these kinds of things. So it's really pretty, it's a pretty cool system. And Trello is, I'm new to this one, and really though impressed by what I've seen so far and what I've experienced so far. And I'm wondering, has anyone used Trello out there so far? Any of you who are taking this? Drop it in the chat box if so. So Christian, you said, I don't currently use any of the online platforms, but I'll look into using the ones that you've suggested. Yeah, I mean, look into it and see, and let us know your experience. I mean, I'm curious to hear how it, goes for you as well. I do, many of the resources I'm going to share with you are, like how to, using Trello for your job search, so you'll get some resources there. And of course, you all know you can do Google searches and get a lot of really good information on, not only that, but organizing your job search. There's so much on the topic. We could talk for a very long time. So, all right, let's see anything. We have a couple more messages that came in. Thank you, everyone. No, but it's neat that you can slide tasks as they move through the funnel. Yep, exactly. Great. It becomes too complicated, Erin says. I feel another thing to manage, it seems. You know what? And that raises a really good point, Erin, and that's nothing to feel bad about. Different people have different preferences, different styles. There's nothing wrong with your Google spreadsheet or your Excel document or whatever, if that works for you, right? But for some people that just doesn't work. They need a little more, and one of the nice things even with Trello, there's like, don't you love the backgrounds? You get to pick your own little background picture, which might be one of your Peace Corps village shots that you're just, like something that just, or whatever, that calms you down. So there's different things like that can go along, but nothing to be, that's absolutely fine that you prefer the other. Okay. Great. All right. So let's go on and just talk briefly about using LinkedIn during the job search too, because when you talk about organizing your job search, one of the best ways to keep yourself organized and up to date, and you're updating your resume as you're putting that in, but LinkedIn is basically where you see a version of, it's not necessarily for verbatim your resume, but you can have your resume attached to it, but it has that the information about you, right, the profile, and it's in a little catchier type of formatting. And quite honestly, the vast majority of employers now use LinkedIn. I think the last stat I saw was 87%. I've seen a stat as high as 93%, but that's a lot. That's the majority of people are using LinkedIn. So if you're not on LinkedIn, I would strongly encourage you to think about that. On the one hand, I know it's one more thing to do and update, but it's not that hard to get it updated. And because it is so huge and it's such a vehicle for you to connect with other people, find those inside contacts when we know that the majority of jobs are filled also through networking, right? Outside of the open to all U.S. citizens federal jobs, certainly, that have that whole scripted way and there can't be any of the favoritism or whatever, in other worlds, right? It definitely, like, it is how you learn about even the opportunities that are going to be coming about before they come about, things like that. So LinkedIn is, I think, one of the most important aspects of your job search and staying organized. So you want to update your profile regularly. Just making, those kind of changes and such to come up more in searches. If you're doing a job search and you're openly looking for a job, you definitely can make your profile searchable, by recruiters and such, and that increases the traffic and who sees yours, and people will reach out to you and things like that. Now, I do have, and I have it on the bottom here, but if you're trying to do more of a stealth job search and not really let the word out that you're looking, you're going to want to make sure to turn off the notifications, like don't notify people when and don't make yours, searchable or things like that. You might want to take more of that. There's a way to keep more, and you can do a quick Google search on that too, on how to exactly do that and walk through the steps, but you can stay more low profile if you want, okay, if you need to for whatever reason. Stay active on LinkedIn, and by that, it might be as little as maybe posting an article or, joining some groups, certainly, and then maybe posting an article that might, make a lot of sense to that group, or a video, or something this is not the place to put your like, haha, isn't this funny video? This is the professional platform, LinkedIn is. Save the other for Facebook or Instagram or whatever other ones you're maybe using. Organize your people searches. When you do, you can listen to our other, we have a couple that are out there on LinkedIn and using LinkedIn in the job search. I talk a lot about doing people searches. So to find contacts in organizations that you want to work in. And it's really easy to do that if you go to the magnifying glass or the little, search bar, and you put in, you'll drop it down to like the people search or use all filters. And then when the filters come up like former job, university, whatever, the one that I really care about typically is former employer, and that's Peace Corps you put in there. And then current employer, whatever organization or industry you're trying to get into, you put that one there, and it's going to spit out the people, right? The RPCV network is huge. We are 220 some thousand, I think is what it is overall. So you factor that into the whole 6 degrees of separation. You have RPCVs working all over in all areas, and RPCVs tend to be, that's a good place to start when you do this connection, because it's easy to connect with other RPCVs, right? They know your experience, your family. It's very low stress, right? And what I'm saying here is when you get those results and you find out the people who are in these different organizations, you need to enter them into your spreadsheet or Trello or whatever you're using to, for, your contacts, so that you have those in the future as well. So that's a little bit about using LinkedIn during the job search to, to stay organized and up to date and up to, to make your job search most productive and efficient. And that's where it ties into the organization, is the efficiency aspect. Okay. Great. Let's see. Dan, good comment. One way to look at this is that by staying uber organized using a project management system, you're also learning a skill that applies to most office jobs these days. Great point. Trello, if you start using Trello and, you can put that on your resume, that's huge in, a lot of organizations, right? So very good point. Very good point, Dan. Awesome. All right. If there are questions that you have in general, I want to make sure we have time for some of those. So go ahead and type any of those into whether they're about LinkedIn itself or about keeping organized in the job search overall. Great. Yeah. Rachel, it sounds like you've used, between 2 jobs, you've used 2 or 3 project management systems. Absolutely. So if you come on board and you already have that, that's great, right? If you don't, they can teach you, but it gives you that leg up, right? Oh, they already know Trello. Great. That's going to be easier. Great. Let's just see. At this point, really, we're at Q&A, and we have about 8 minutes left. So I definitely want to take as many questions. I can certainly stay later, but I do want to respect people's time and such if you do need to go at whatever time. So at this point, what other questions do you have for me? And again, feel free to unmute.
Jody, Rachel and I, Rachel, sorry if I'm outing you here, have been back channeling a little bit, just talking about putting yourself out there, especially for creative type jobs, and feel free to jump in, Rachel, unmute yourself. But do you recommend having like your own personal resume website where you can post writing samples or photography or videos that you've worked on.
Mhm.
What's the best way to demonstrate a portfolio of your past work to people these days?
Yeah, as I understand it, I mean, when I'm working with people who are, more of the creatives, I see many of them that have, they'll have their own website, right? And they'll have their portfolio, like just like you said, Dan, actually, they'll have their portfolio of sample, depending on what they are, right? Sample media things or sample articles they've authored if they're going for more of a comms, writing type of thing. So they'll usually have that organized nicely, whether it's, what is the website, just a website of their own, right? What is it? Wixler, gosh, Wix, is that, I'm blanking on the name of it, but whatever platform, but for you to create your own website and have your resume, your credentials, a little bit of your credentials, and of course there's a lot of emphasis when it's the creative on the layout and how it looks, right? So people put a lot into that, right? Making it. I would recommend that you do a little bit of research on, like, building or how to spotlight creative materials, or how to build a website for creative media jobs, that kind of thing. Because that will definitely serve you very well, and I think more than other ones. Most regular jobs don't necessarily need that, but because your job is to create and and package and show that you're good at putting together these kinds of things, they want to see, which I don't blame them. That's hard to tell by just talking. Great. I'm glad it was helpful. Susan's asking, any tips for motivation? That was asked earlier. Yeah. Sure. Let's talk about motivation a little bit more. And again, feel free, any of you, to unmute yourselves and maybe share what's worked for you. I think what I'll share while we're waiting for some things to come in would be get like trying to not get overwhelmed, right? It's easy to get overwhelmed by the whole process. So trying to chunk down your to-do lists or your tasks that are related to, right, to the job search, and give yourself a reward. Like, it's not all about, I'm going to just put the pedal to the metal and just 40 hours a week, I'm just going to be applying for jobs. And that's just unrealistic. I would much rather have somebody take a step back and apply for less, but do a really good job on tailoring and such, and build in some breaks for their own emotional well-being, and something that and ideally build in things also like taking a walk, that are good for your health, right? Because let's face it, doing a job search is also somewhat depressing oftentimes, right? And so it's, how can you stay positive and motivated? Because I think the motivation, or the lack thereof, sometimes is with the negativity that comes from not hearing back, or applying for so long and still looking, and not all of that. And so it's really hard to take that approach, but it's super important, because people can smell negativity beyond, I mean, so far away, right? Virtually and such as well. So you want to always really approach it from that positive, type of, and to do that, like I said, taking breaks, going on walks, doing something that, you enjoy as a small break. That's great. Yeah. And let's see. Oh, someone gave some good advice here. Let's see. Let me scroll up slightly and see what we have here. Hillary, yes, really good. Okay, take a walk. Yep, take a walk helps. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we get to all of these questions. Someone shared a website. Go back to this webinar. Great, Dan, thank you for sharing. Is that the webinar that's staying like?
That's Rhonda's, Dr.
Yep.
Rhonda Until's wellness.
Yes, the
well-being.
wellness one. That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Check that out. And any of you who are on here, I would encourage you to download the chat box, because Dan's been dropping a lot of great things in. So have the rest of you. And that way you can go back and actually get that. Just go to the bottom right where it has the 3 little dots, click on it, and it'll say you can choose download chat, and it'll download it wherever on your device where you would, set up, Trello and stuff. So not Trello, anywhere you had set up Zoom. Great. Let's see here. Looking for a job. Yeah, it is stressful. And sometimes you just have to take a few days off and not think about it. And I think that's okay. I mean, you know what you need to stay healthy and all of that. What you wouldn't want to do is continually procrastinate starting. Like, a lot of people are so overwhelmed that they never start. They're like, oh, I've got to first get organized. And then they never get started because they never get the organization part done. And then it's like, oh, I've got to do that. And they just don't, sleeping, the whatever. And so, yeah, tying it to, I love the accountability factor that, was mentioned earlier by, one of you saying, hey, is anyone interested in an accountability partner to be able to just be on and keep ourselves to doing what we're supposed to be doing. That's an awesome idea, whether it's from somebody else here in the group or one of your other Stodge mates, from, your Peace Corps country of service or whoever, friend or family. So great. Let's see here. I do find, oh, thank you. I'm glad you find the webinars motivating. Thanks so much, Hillary. And just doing informational interviews with people who work in areas I'm interested in gets me inspired and gives me energy. That's a really great idea. And that's something that's really helping you directly. The informational interviews, when you need a break from that computer screen and doing all those, applications, going out and talking to somebody who works in the field you're interested in definitely can help motivate you. And you can get some advice sometimes and be like, one of the challenges I'm finding is what advice do you have, based on your own experience? You can get some of those questions answered, which is great. Y'all are really talking now. I love this. We have several coming in. We had several new messages there. Great. I keep organizing my house and going to IKEA, all in the name of organizing my space to clear my mind rather than getting started. Exactly. That's don't, just maybe you let that part go and you just realize that it's not going to be completely organized and just try in the, just is what you can. And yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Certain days for tasks. Now that's interesting, Rachel. Someone in career services recommended designating certain days for tasks. For example, Monday, Tuesday is the job search. Wednesday, Thursday, applying. I love that idea. That's great. And it's easier to keep track of. Of course, don't be too rigid, because if you find that dream job on Monday and, and you need to apply, the deadline is Tuesday, you're going to do that, right? Obviously. But that's great. If it helps you more feel like you're accomplishing more and seeing the results, that's great. Trying to live a minimal life. Yes, someone says, great. All right. Thank you, Kristen, for sharing advice with Rachel. That's great. Get your online brand going. Yep, getting LinkedIn profile up. All of those things are great. Wonderful. Awesome. Great. Yep. A lot of tools on LinkedIn are underutilized. Absolutely. That could be a good topic. Dan, maybe you had done, I might have missed it, a call up for what would you recommend for future webinars? Because we are here to serve you, and we want to make sure that we do the topics that are of most interest to you. So if you have any, Dan, I don't know if you shared with them the link to the career questionnaire, or they can just put it in the chat box, what you still need, what you want, what have you not gotten yet that would be helpful in terms of a podcast or webinar. Okay.
And I would add, or guests that you think, the type of guests you think we could invite that would be useful to hear from.
Yes, great.
And Jody, I don't think I have that link to the forum accessible. Okay. If you want to drop it.
Yeah, hold on one sec. I'll just go out. You just keep taking, yeah. So if anyone does want to, if anyone wants to at this point, I'm just going to stop sharing here, and you can see all my windows that I have open. I'll reduce my screen and get out and get it. Okay. Great. Anything else? Anyone willing to just, chat, just put yourself off mute and
And Meg, thanks for asking about Jody's podcast. I think we're up to like 10 episodes now, and
yep.
you can just type into Spotify or Apple podcast Jobs with Jody, and it should come right up.
The last
That's
few are
Jody with
about
an
to be
I.
posted. They're still, I think Olivia's just finishing the editing of them. So yeah, but absolutely. If you just go to Spotify and do Jobs with Jody, and you'll see what comes up. Yeah, let me just get one thing for you. Any other thoughts
Rachel, I
right
like the
now?
idea of
Great. Why don't we go ahead? I think we can probably go ahead and end the recording, and then we can certainly stay on with folks that do have questions, and I will get that that link put